Welcome to another Memphis Monday 369, our fifth week of our eighth year. Last week I mentioned cutting boards, and I got started on the cutting boards, and then a fellow contacted me, said he brought over a little piece of paper with the dimensions and everything, said he needed a backstop for a workbench and a little parts tray. And that sounded like a way better, funner project than cutting boards. So I said, let's get her done. But we're not going to get anything done unless we knock off the chit chat and get to work. I was all in on those cutting boards and all this wood cut, teak and maple. Here's teak and cherry. But maybe we'll get to these next week. Here's a little sketch of what we're doing. We're not building the table. We're just building this backstop here and the parts tray. And here's my little plan for the project. Here's the cut list. There's, I think, 6 total parts of sheet goods, and then I got 16 feet of 2x2s. And then this is the backstop, and this is the parts tray. So I've already cut out these parts here and kind of stuck them together. Let's take a look at it. This is the backstop. I haven't started working on the tray yet. It's 2 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and then these are essentially 1 foot shelf in there. The work table itself serves as the shelf down here. It's put together with 1/2-inch plywood that is stapled and glued with cleats under the shelf, holding it up there. It's also glued and stapled in the back. And then the whole structure is stiffened with these 2x2s. This 2x2 edging here. And that's secured with that's secured to the plywood with a dado that runs right down the middle, and then it's just put on the plywood. I built this thing out of some plywood that was so bad that I didn't want to use it for anything. Down here, I don't know if you can see it at the bottom. The back extends past the top of the table so that it can be stabilized, and then this is going to go up against a wall here, so that will stabilize the cabinet. Now this plywood is especially bad. I'm just going to take it down to 80 grit, basically to get the any spilt glue off of it or anything really gross. I'm standing here with a color called Golden Pecan. Looks pretty good, but it's always going to look like exterior grade plywood. Can't change that. The good part about this exterior plywood is it doesn't have a veneer on it. like cabinet grade plywood. Cabinet grade plywood, especially the Chinese and the Vietnamese, have a very thin veneer on the outside. This doesn't have a veneer, it's just got a ply. The outer plies are pretty thick. I ordinarily wait about 24 hours after I stain something before putting any varnish on it. But you don't have to do that with this. If you got dry exterior plywood, because particularly if it's dry, it will soak up the stain like there's no tomorrow, and probably in an hour. So you can put some varnish on it. I'm going to use spar varnish, stuff called spar urethane. Since we have time, I'm going to give you a little takeaway here. Always stir your stain up. Don't just shake it. Because the color, the pigment will settle to the bottom. Even if you shake it, it won't mix right. And I mix it even while I'm staining. You can see how bad this plywood is. I know this must be BC or something. But anyway, I've had this piece of plywood for about a year, but it's so bad. You can see all big knots in it. It's so bad, it looks so ugly. Couldn't find a project to use it on. Now the guy making this for you, he'll say, well, can I pay you for the wood? And I'll say, no, I'll donate it to the cause. I won't tell him that the wood is basically worthless and I was going to throw it away. So I get to be a hero and get rid of this piece of plywood. Oh, we got the backstop pretty much finished, unless there's something else I need to think of later. Let's take a look at the next part of the project, which is the parts trays. This is the second part of the project. We got the backstop up here, and then on the front of the workbench, which I have in gray here, they want this little parts tray. Let's look at our design for that. This is what I came up with for the parts tray. It'd be 6 inches tall, 7 inches wide total, and 6 inches wide on the inside. And these are removable. Instead of having permanent dividers, I've got dados in the sidewalls where the 1/2 inch dividers will slide in and out, so you can vary the distance. The sides of the box are solid wood, 3/4 inch. The bottom is 1/2 inch plywood, and it's held together with screws in the ends. I didn't draw those in though, did I? I gotta make 2 of these. Parts trays. So I went ahead and roughed up this first one. It's got these, I'm going to put 5 dados along the inside here, and I have these removable dividers. And instead of using the exterior plywood, I'm using this better grade of cabinet grade plywood. The deal here is you got to make sure these dados line up, and then the second factor is keeping the box square so that these dividers are all interchangeable. Okay, our next thing we need to do is figure out how to make these dados exactly across from one another. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, I've cut out the stock for the sides, or the front and back anyway. Takeaway here is whenever you want something really to be square, and this is a Mr. Obvious statement, I know, but you got to make sure that these two boards on either side, when you have something symmetrical like that, they have to be the exact same length. And I don't mean off a 64th, I mean exact. Otherwise it can't be square because the sides are different lengths. So just keep that in mind. Okay, now for the drill of making these dados. It doesn't matter where these dados are on this board. You know, if they're unevenly spaced, that's probably good. That gives you a lot more options in terms of sizing your compartments. Let me show you how I set this up on the table saw. Okay, all I've done here is I have my table saw sled. I've set my dado head cutter at 1/2 inch, and my sliders are just shy of 1/2 inch, so they should slide in there pretty easy. Now, where I put these dados, you know, it's sort of they're evenly spaced, but there can be some variation in there, which is probably good. But the main thing is I got to make sure that on each cut, the boards are exactly lined up here. And you can see I'm cutting both dados at the same time, so they have to be in the same position. When you do dados and rabbets and all that kind of stuff, you want to check yourself quite often. Okay, now how this is going to work is my spacer then will fit right down in that slot. Now I have these removable deals. Okay, let me go ahead and cut the rest of the dados and we'll be on a roll. And here you can see the results. The dados are going to line up directly across from one another. Putting the ends on. The ends are 6 inches tall here and 7 inches wide. And I like to go by the advice, don't make a mistake on purpose, but that's exactly what I'm doing here, because I'm using 3-inch screws here, which means that my screws are going into this 3/4 inch maple 2 1/4 inches. You know, I need 1 3/4 screws, or, you know, I need something much shorter than that, but this is all I got. And so I'm having to take extreme measures to keep from messing it up. First thing I'm doing is drilling way into the wood. And I have another drill set up with a countersink. And then I put my screw in. Now it kind of free flows until it gets almost all the way through. Well, sometimes you get lucky. The box is totally square, so we don't have to rack anything. What I'm showing you here is whenever you do dados like this, and you're going to be putting a back on something or something, you want to mark where those dados are so you don't drive nails down to those dados by mistake. So I'll be able to avoid those dados because those layup lines. Okay, let's put this back on. I got the back cut to length, and I checked the square on the back. It's also square, so it's just a matter of gluing it on here and sticking it down with staples. Now I'm going to be staining this thing pretty soon, so I want to be real careful with the glue. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to put very much on at all. I probably shouldn't put any, but it's such a habit. Now I've been really careful with this glue, not only because I don't want a lot of squeeze out. One way to limit squeeze out is to kind of let the glue get tacky and about half cured before you stick your pieces together. But another reason you really need to be careful with it on dados is modern glue, anyway, is really a plastic. It's a, you know, the solvents evaporate and it just turns into plastic. So if you have any glue squeeze out into your dado, you're going to have a glob of plastic down in the bottom of your dado, which you'll have to dig out later. It's just a pain in the butt. Okay, I'm using this exterior plywood, and we put the good side in so we don't have to look at the knots. And I'll just follow my guidelines here and make sure I don't put any staples in the wrong place. I don't know, you might recall, we usually put our bottoms into dados cut into the side here. Of course, what that does is it takes some of the interior space away. And for really rugged drawers, this is really the way to go. 1/2 inch bottom glued and stapled to the stock. What I want to see is if this size divider from our prototype fits here. And it does. So I guess we can make all our dividers this size right here. Let's think about doing that. Well, that about does it for Memphis Monday 369. We got our parts bins completed with 5 removable dividers in each one. And we completed our workbench backstop cabinet. And importantly, we were able to find a use for a piece of plywood that was so bad, I was about ready to throw it away. But we were able to hide most of the defects. And on the front, it came out all right. Okay, so overall, I'm pretty satisfied. Good morning. Today we're going to build this workbench backstop out of some 1/2-inch plywood. Actually, it's a reclaiming job. The plywood's really bad. And we're building these spare parts bins with removable dividers. Overall, I think it's going to be a pretty good project. So if you want to see it, stay tuned, because that's what we're going to do next. Well, that'll do it for Memphis Monday 369. Today we built a workbench backstop. We were able to take an extremely ugly piece of 1/2-inch exterior plywood, and by strategically moving the sides around, we were able to make a fairly presentable final project. Of course, it's just going to be used, in a shop, mechanic's workstation. And we made those little spare parts bins. We made them to order using the dimensions that were supplied to us. But instead of making fixed dividers, we put 5 optional dividers in the bins. So I think everything turned out all right. Like, favorite, share, and all the stuff you do on the internet. But most important, make sure you're back here next week for another exciting Memphis Monday. Thanks for playing along.